Hi, my name is Nyla Choates, and today on MCU Presents, we'll be covering our episode of Black Excellence. Today we'll have two important guests with us, Mr. Sean Anglon, and later we'll be having Ms. Taylor Baloney. Hi, Mr. Anglon.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming out onto the show. So along with being assistant principal at Rancho Middle School, what else do you do? I heard you do a cultural imperative program. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So the Cultural Imperative Program was actually created by Tony Browder and Deborah Watkins. It's been in existence for about 3 years, and the first year started like in DC, and so the students were only out on the East Coast. The second year they came out to the West Coast and we're in San Jose, and now in this third iteration they're still in San Jose, they're also in Milpitas, and they're up in Oakland, as well as I want to say at least 7 other spots around the nation. Yeah, and so the program's focus is to help students learn a little bit more about African history prior to slavery, because typically when we think about African American history, we only focus on slavery moving forward.
Exactly.
But actually there's a lot of history about Africa, and that history has a lot of great influence and impact on the world. And it's important for students to hear this, so they understand where they're coming from.
Wow, okay. So was there a certain person that motivated you to teach and educate young people about this program?
No, really for me, I've always been one to try to teach students. I've been in education for over 20 years, and this program aligned perfectly with some of my own personal beliefs as well as goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what exactly are some of the things you teach in this program?
All right, well, the big thing that is taught is the fact that children typically have experienced what we call a miseducation. They haven't actually learned about their history, and sometimes they've been given false information that can somewhat limit their potential.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, the program tries to instill within students a pride of being of African descent.
So when you're teaching in this class, how do the students react to learning this newfound information that they never get in school?
Well, a lot of students are really excited, and it helps them kind of understand and recognize things that they themselves had thought about before. One of the things that's nice, there's a culminating field trip that students are trying to go on where they get to go to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And during that field trip, students are taught some of the African influences on the creation of Washington, D.C. And so it's really nice to see and hear, and it's great to see the wonder in their eyes as they hear how the U.S. saw itself somewhat as like a new Egypt when it was founded.
That's amazing. So why exactly do you think in schools we're not educated on this information? Why do we get this miseducation?
Well, I think that the United States of America, the history is quite problematic for many people. We view ourselves as Americans as being a nation where we respect all people and give everyone an opportunity to share their ideas. But if we honestly looked at some of the history that's occurred, some people might have difficulty coming to terms with it because it doesn't mesh with what they've been told. And so it's kind of like a sanitized version of history. And typically what happens is that only when you get to college do you actually start to learn this history. And I think that that's a little too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you feel if we were to learn at an earlier time, starting, you know, in middle school or even elementary school, how do you think that would affect how our views are now?
Well, I think that if more people, and not just people of African descent, but more people regardless learned about African American history and African history, there'd be a greater respect for African American people in the country. A typical thing that you sometimes hear when it comes to Silicon Valley is that people worry that so-and-so is not a good fit for their company. But in learning about African history and in learning about African American history, you'll learn that there were numerous inventors, numerous innovators. And with that understanding, that concept, that belief that people don't fit would be shown to be false.
Are there any inventors that you think on the top of your head that just were not taught in school that we created ourselves?
Well, there's let's see, there's so many. You have, I was thinking about the real McCoy, who created, let's see if I get this correct. He had, I want to say a patent where he was, wow, you got me on the spot. I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry.
It's all right, yeah. But I know we did create many things that were just not taught in schools.
Correct.
So I myself, being a part of the Milpitas School District, I've heard that a lot of black students feel like our race just is underrepresented. And you being a middle school assistant principal, how well do you think that we're taught in schools? Like, how well do you think the education system represents us?
I think that, as I said earlier, there's a sanitized education that kind of goes out. And so for a lot of students of color, not just African American students, their history isn't taught. And so because of that, sometimes students tune out a little bit. There are those who just have a thirst for knowledge, and so regardless of what the information is going to be, they're going to try to learn it. But for many students, if they don't actually see a positive representation of themselves, they're not really going to feel that that education is for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can improve our education systems throughout nationwide with more black history and learning more about our African descent?
Well, I think that if we were to start earlier, say like 4th grade, you would get more students, especially young men, who see that school is for them. Right now, nationwide, we have a dilemma where a lot of young men start to tune out of education. And it actually is irregardless of ethnicity. And part of it is just the fact that you don't get to see a lot of men of color who actually impact the world and society. And so I think if more students saw this, one, young African American boys and girls would have greater pride in themselves. You'd also have students of other ethnicities learning to respect African American culture a little bit more. So you might not hear the N-word fly around as often as you do, or you might not have so many people stereotype an individual and assume that they play a sport or assume that they must be a musician. And there wouldn't be the shock and surprise that you sometimes feel if you are a well-spoken individual, but people don't think that they don't expect you to be well-spoken. And so in lieu of that, there would just be an acceptance of the varied cultural experiences that we have as African Americans. I think that if we just started to teach students earlier, we would probably not have much of the political strife that we experience right now. And you wouldn't see as many people, take Virginia, for example. They're talking about how for a lot of college yearbooks, they're finding people who were in blackface or who were in the KKK outfits, and they thought it was funny.
Exactly.
But if they were actually taught more history, they'd recognize how insensitive that was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if there was one thing that you wish that everyone knew about Black history that they don't know now, what would it be?
One thing. That's a hard one because there's so much that I want people to know.
Yes.
I think the main thing that people should know is that Africa was the base of so much knowledge. Historically, you had people from Rome and from Greece who would go to Africa to study with the great knowledgeable mathematicians and historians, and then they would take that knowledge back to their countries.
Yes.
And so obviously they saw how impactful that intelligence and knowledge was. But somehow in the hundreds of years since, you've had a vilification somewhat of the continent of Africa. And people see it as empty and devoid of knowledge when that's not the case. Never has been the case.
Oh, I love that. So, it being Black History Month, what exactly does Black History Month mean to you?
Well, it's interesting because the concept of Black History Week was started by Carter G. Woodson. And eventually this expanded to a month, but he didn't want it just to be a week. He actually created it to exist only until public education incorporated Black history within its curriculum. Sadly, we still aren't there. We still have to celebrate it this way. And notice the motto, Black History Month, was then used for other communities of color. So then you have Asian American History Month, and you have Latino History Month, and you have Pacific Islander History Month. And it's just add-ons instead of actually interweaving it the way our society must if we're going to move forward.
Okay. Well, my last final question for you is, if there was one thing, actually no, I would like to close by saying, what is your most favorite thing about being Black?
My most favorite thing about being Black?
No, I know, this one's very hard.
It is very hard. I would probably say the perseverance. We as a people have had to overcome so many obstacles. And as a result of that, little things that sometimes adversely affect other communities don't affect us as much because we have already experienced some of the obstacles. A perfect example is when I lived in Japan, I went out to an izakaya with some of my colleagues, and we entered the izakaya, and the Japanese proprietor looked at us and he thought, there are too many gaijin, which means foreigners. And so he put us in a private room. My friends were very irate and they were upset. They were like, why didn't they seat us out there with everybody else? For me, I said, well, we have our own private room. This is perfect. You know, we can get as loud as we want and not actually interrupt anybody. But they were like, no, this is no fair. I'm like, wow, you're experiencing racism for the first time in your life, but this is nothing. And see, to me, that's a perfect example of how, because of our sad but true negative experiences in this society, we can actually overcome many of the things that might trip up other people later in life.
Wow, okay. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Anglon, for coming and speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Oh, of course. And so we will be back with our second guest after this brief break.
Have you ever just wanted someone to love you? Have you ever just been lonely? And in this cruel world, have you just tried all the dating websites like Tinder, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, farmersonly.com, and you just could never find someone to love? Well, Plant Life can help you. All you have to do is go to plantlife.com and you can find a companion like Eunice here, and they will help you find true happiness. For 5 simple orders of $19.99.99, you can have all the plants you would ever want and all the love that you will ever need. Plantlife.com. Find better life. He's using you, Jessica.
And we're back with our second guest here, Taylor Baloney. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
So you are a great representation of what Black excellence is. And so can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your business?
Yes, so thank you very much for having me here. So actually I have my own startup company. I'm very excited about it. It's 2 years in, so still pretty new. It's actually called Find My Everything. And at Find My Everything, we create and sell GPS tracking devices to help you find anything or anyone that is important to you. Actually, my story is I used to be a flight attendant, and I actually lost my phone, which obviously is very important to me. I put it in the wrong bag by accident, and when we landed, I thought someone stole it, but it turns out I put it in the wrong bag, and they were able to FedEx it to me the next day, which was a huge blessing. So I thought if it wasn't for this great technology, I would have never gotten my phone back. And I thought people don't just lose their phones, but they lose all kind of people and all kind of things all the time. So that's how I created Find My Everything. Right now, our target and our niche is safety. So we're actually focused on human trafficking because I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's actually 24.9 million people globally that are forced into human trafficking and forced labor. So because it's such a huge epidemic and it's growing all throughout the world and even in America, and a lot of people don't realize that, my device is actually to help combat those issues. It's actually an IoT device. So this is the device right here. Yeah, it's really cool. It looks almost like a keychain, so you would connect it to anything or anyone that you don't want to go missing, or if they do get missing, that you could actually track them using GPS technology. So you actually sync it to an app, and you go on the app, and there's a map. And if they go missing, you can see their exact location, which is really cool. And there's also an SOS button, which is great for if an emergency arises. The person will actually press that button, and a signal will be directly sent to whatever number is programmed. And there's actually 3 numbers that can be programmed. So God forbid the first person doesn't answer, it'll automatically go to the second number, and then if they don't answer, it goes to the third. So it's great in terms of safety, and I'm really excited right now. I have an angel investor. I was able to come to Silicon Valley and work hard and get an investor, and now I'm actually raising even more funds right now to just get this product out in the market, and I have my prototype, so I'm really excited right now.
Wow, that is so amazing. So it is amazing to have a female entrepreneur, let alone a Black female entrepreneur on the show. Can you please tell me what type of obstacles you go through on your day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so being African American, being a female, a double minority, obviously it's not easy. It can be lonely, especially being in tech, the tech industry. A lot of times I go to these networking events or these, different meetings, and people think I'm in the wrong room. They look at me like, who is she? And it's definitely, a challenge. But for me, I'm very confident in who I am and what I'm doing. So I don't let those problems or people's, opinions or stereotypes negatively affect me because I'm really confident in what I'm doing. So I'm also really trying to help combat those issues because I'm really passionate about helping the African American female community with STEM. So that's another passion of mine, actually.
I love that so much. Me, myself, growing up in high school, I don't hear too much about Black history besides slavery. How was it growing up for you?
Yeah, I actually went to a predominantly non-African American high school. There weren't very many of us at all. So I definitely didn't learn very much African American history besides, just MLK or the Rosa Parks that we all learned about. But growing up, my mom really instilled a strong Black history, which is great. She made sure that we learned about our history and our culture and our people, and we were confident in who we were, and that really helped me to embrace myself and my history and my culture as an African American, yeah.
Okay, well, when I think of you, all I see is Black excellence. So what exactly does Black excellence mean to you?
That's a great question. Actually, Black excellence for me, it really means just making your community proud as an African American, not only for the youth or for people watching you, but in order to honor our ancestors and those who came before us. Our ancestors worked so hard to be able to give us these rights that we don't have, we didn't have, and to me, to not make them proud and to not honor them would just be a disgrace.
So back to you in your business, do you feel like being Black and being a female together, does that affect the way other businesses look at you?
Yeah, I actually have a really funny story about that. I remember when I went to a manufacturing company that I went to see about them producing my product, and one of the directors I was meeting with, he came into the lobby because I had emailed them, we set up a meeting, and I was right in front of him. And he literally scanned the entire room looking for me because my name is Taylor. You know, I could be a Caucasian male for all he knows. And so he had no idea it was me. And so I went up to him and I was just like, you know, hi, you know, it's Taylor. And the look on his face, he was so shocked. But, you know, it was great to really represent, you know, my people as African-American woman. So I definitely have people that stereotype me or who are really shocked about what I'm doing when I tell them. But the great way that I'm able to combat those stereotypes is when I start talking and they realize I know what I'm talking about. You know, I have my company, I have my business, and I'm doing great things. And once they see that, those stereotypes wipe away.
Yes, okay. So are there some other Black leaders that you look up to and that motivate you to start your own business?
Yeah, so if we go back in the day, you know, Madam C.J. Walker being the first African-American female millionaire is someone who inspired me. But if I think about the tech business and some people right now, Morgan DeBoe, actually the creator of Blavity and Afrotech, is someone who really inspired me. She moved all the way from the Midwest to start her company. She was able to get venture capitalist funding, raise millions of dollars, and she's definitely someone who inspires me for sure.
So are there other ways in your business that you used your platform to help young people into the STEM program?
Yeah, so I actually do a lot of speaking engagements. A couple, for example, as I was flown to IBM, their headquarters, and I was actually able to speak for Black History Month last year, and I actually was able to speak at the Green Scholars Program, which is a STEM program for African Americans, and it's promoting STEM within the community. And I was able to talk about entrepreneurship and STEM and how we can actually combine the two. And I also spoke at Russell Middle School. So I've actually been doing a lot of speaking engagements, and I also have a new mentee program called Blossom, where I'm going to be taking these young women to different networking events, including Startup Grind. So I'm really excited about that.
That is so amazing. So knowing that there's so much negativity right now going on in the media with Black men and Black women, who are some of the positive Black role models in the media that you look up to?
Yeah, I really like Angela Rye. You know, she was one of the members of the National Black Caucus, and she's someone who I really look up to because she really promotes positivity within the African American community. Even when other people or other ethnicities are trying to tear us down and speak negatively, she's always very, very encouraging and optimistic and always speaking these positive words. So I really look up to her in the community.
I love that. So with being a Black leader, what do you inspire and to tell other people who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, and what obstacles will they go through?
Yeah, well, with any entrepreneur, you know, I would say to just keep going, because people want to always like show this glamorized side of an entrepreneur, but there's so many trials, there's so many tribulations. So just keep on going, no matter what you will face. People are gonna have, you know, negative comments. Not everyone's gonna, you know, give you this positivity, so you have to be confident in who you are and what you're trying to do. I would also say to look for people that can inspire and motivate you. Look for a mentor, someone that's maybe gone down that path before, who is an entrepreneur or has had that experience, so that when you're down and you need help, they can really help you along your journey.
Okay. So it being also Black History Month and Black Excellence, what does Black History Month mean to you? How have you celebrated it before?
Yeah, to me, Black History Month really just means embracing your culture and embracing who you are. African Americans have so much positivity, so much positive things that they've created, you know, from our music, blues and jazz and R&B and hip hop. You know, we're great athletes, you know, we're great dancers, we're even great in terms of STEM and scientists. And so to me, just celebrating it just means being great in who you are and really knowing about your people and about your culture.
Okay. So how has being a Black woman, how has that like positively affected you in the industry? How, like, why do you love it? Why do you love doing what you do?
I love doing what I do because I love to inspire people. I inspire people of all ages and all ethnicities, you know, not only African Americans, but there have been people who come to me and are like, if you can do it, so can I. And they're just so happy and they're so inspired just listening to my story and what I've done. So that's really, like, to me, the best part of who I am and what I'm doing is just motivating and inspiring other people.
If there's something you were able to tell your past self when you started at, I believe, 23 years old,
yes,
what would it be that you have told yourself?
I would say definitely, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I like that question. I would definitely say that no matter what happens, you're gonna make it. And I would say it's not about the destination, but it's about the journey. You know, sometimes we get so caught up in the finish line and making it that we don't stop and smell the roses. We don't stop and achieve the little successes. You know,
Yeah.
we're thinking, well, if I'm not a millionaire, then I'm not successful. But every day you do something new, you do something great, that's a success.
Yes. Okay. So when you grew up, did you always want to have your own business? Is that what you
Yeah,
always
I
wanted to
actually
do?
grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. You know, my grandfather had his own ambulance service, own funeral home. My mother had her own restaurant. So I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be a business owner. I just didn't know exactly what. And the funniest thing, I never would have thought that I would be in STEM or I would
Yeah.
be in a tech company. And it's something that just kind of happened. And I think growing up in Silicon Valley and being introduced to it just definitely, you know, motivated me more to have like this tech company.
Yes. Okay. So what is one of your favorite things just about being Black?
I like that. So I think my favorite thing about being Black is our culture. And I feel like so many other cultures love and embrace our culture. And I love that. And it's like, you know, some people complain about that, but I think that's beautiful because at one time, you know, we were looked down on and our culture was mocked and made fun of. So now, you know, whether it's our hairstyles from our braids and our twists and, you know what I mean, our music and, you know, some of our clothing styles, I think people are really embracing who we are. So I just think it's a proud moment to be African American.
Yeah. So they, what you're saying is they talk about cultural appropriation. So is what you're saying that you don't really look down on it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would say it depends on what you mean by cultural appropriation, because I think there's a difference between embracing culture and really loving someone's culture, and then like you know, cultural appropriation. So I think sometimes we confuse the two, and I think there's sometimes when people just really respect it and they like it. You know, I love this. I love your braids, or you know what I mean. I love what you're wearing, or I love your music. You know, so I know some people definitely consider it more appropriation, and others, like myself, I think it's nice that people are embracing it as well.
I've never actually thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I really like that. So back to your business. Is there a goal you're looking forward to at the end of your road?
Yeah, so definitely my main goal right now is to receive more funding. And once I do receive more funding, I would love to have my product, you know, worldwide, all across different businesses and different consumers having my product. You know, I want Find My Everything to be a world-renowned name and brand, and I want people to have my product all over. So that's really my goal.
Okay. Is there something that you'd like the young people to know, just to close out for you?
Yeah, I would say whatever your goals are, whatever your dreams are, go for it. Keep pushing. Be confident in who you are and yourself, and really just strive for excellence, strive for greatness, and don't be afraid to go after what you want.
Thank you. So I'll be closing our segment of MCU Presents in today's episode of Black Excellence. Thank you so much for watching.